Hey guys, it's Lane with Tim's Nation. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the return of the DevWatch. This is my DeathWatch army that I'm going to be playing against DJ's Necrons today. And for those of you who've been following along on the channel, you know that I've been trying something with DeathWatch to let them kick out just a ton of devastating wounds in a single turn. I've been continuing to develop that list. So these are a bunch of new units that I haven't used before on the channel. And we'll kind of get through how everything works together, what I'm hoping for them to do. And we got to talk about Sternguard for a bit because I am bringing 30 Sternguard. For reasons I can only attribute to my own madness, we are taking 30 Sternguard today in 3 drop pods. Only the most meta stuff for me, guys. So, anyways, the big trick that the DevWatch list does, the Devastating Wounds DevWatch list, is that I can combine giving my entire army sustained hits for a turn with rerolling all hits and wounds for 1 turn into 2 different targets. And if I take a whole bunch of weapons that have devastating wounds, it means I can basically kill 2 of anything. 2 Satans, 2 monoliths, 2 big demons, whatever it may be. For most of the stuff that's out there, I can chew through it with just a ton of single damage devastating wounds. So we'll talk a little bit about DeathWatch. Some people may be familiar with their mission or their army rules. We're going to talk through what the DeathWatch does. We'll talk through these specific units because, like I said, a lot of these are things you haven't seen on the channel yet before, things I've decided to bring, figured out to make the DeathWatch cook a little bit better. And we'll talk about what each of the units does. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the synergies I want to see that happen today. I want to see which units work together, which strats I'm going to use, what little sneaky shenanigans I'm going to make pop off here. So let's get into it. Here is my my DeathWatch list. All right, this is the DeathWatch army list I'm bringing today. So first, to talk about DeathWatch a little bit, they are Space Marines, so they get Oath of Moment. So once per, in my command phase, I can pick 1 unit, and my whole army rerolls hits into that unit. And then the detachment rules for DeathWatch are mission tactics. Now, it's kind of similar to Space Marine doctrines and the Gladius Task Force, in that there are 3 different things. I can pick each one once per game, and the whole army benefits from it, but I can only use each one of those benefits once. So, DeathWatch mission tactics. In my command phase, I choose one of these things, and it's active from that command phase to the next one. So it still applies during my opponent's turn. If I should overwatch or in the fight phase, that sort of thing, it still applies. We have 3 of these, and I can choose each one to be active once per game. We got Führer Tactics. My entire army, both shooting and fighting, gets sustained hits 1. Malleus Tactics is the next one. My entire army, in both shooting and fighting, gets lethal hits. And the third one is Purgatus Tactics. The entire army, anytime I roll a 6 to hit, that attack becomes precision. So 6s to hit become precision. Now, the actual list itself, we got a couple different characters today. With 4 characters, I usually don't run this many characters, but I've been trying some things out and I wanted to make a couple things, essentially let my drop pods drop in a little bit better. But characters, we have a Phobos Captain. Now, the Phobos Captain's special ability is that he allows up to 3 Phobos or Scout units to redeploy at the beginning of the game. This allows me to throw out him, the Infiltrators, and today I'm running the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. All 3 of them have the Phobos keyboard, so I can bounce them. I can redeploy them after we do the roll off to see who goes first. That's a very strong ability. Second, he's got the enhancement Tome of Ectoclades. This is what makes this list cook. So I got to keep that Space Marine Captain alive until he can pop this off. Tome of Ectoclades is the enhancement. Once per game, it allows me to pick my Oath target and then pick a second target, second enemy unit. And my entire army rerolls all hits and wounds into both targets. Per the wording of Tome of Ectoclades, I pick 2 targets and reroll all hits and wounds into both of them. That lasts from my command phase until my next command phase. So it applies for Overwatch, it applies in the fight phase, it applies all the time. And with this particular list, I take a bunch of stuff that has devastating wounds abilities and just reroll hits and wounds and fish for those 6s for devs, which means I can chew through some of the most difficult to kill stuff in the game. Next, we have an Apothecary Biologus. This guy's special abilities, he gives his unit lethal hits. That's going to be cool. He's going to be joining an Eradicator squad, so it'll benefit them there. If they happen to kill something in close combat, he goes to like OC 8 or 9, something ridiculous. He's with Eradicators, so I don't expect his unit to kill much in close combat, but it can come up sometimes. And then his enhancement is the Beacon and Jealous. What this does is gives the unit he joins Deep Strike, so my Eradicators will not have to walk on from the side. They're not going to get out of a transport. They're not going to have to go into strategic reserves. They're going to true Deep Strike, and they're also allowed to rapid ingress for free because of this enhancement. So that's the Apothecary Biologist. Next, today we're running the Lieutenant with Combi Weapon. Now, this little guy, he's got so many rules. He's got all the rules associated with him. But really, the reason I'm taking him, he's lone operative. He does have a counter move, so if someone moves within 12 inches of him, he can counter move out of the way. But the real reason I'm taking him is he's a cheap little way to infiltrate. And when I set him up on the board, he can block out my opponent's infiltrators or their redeploys or their deep strikes, essentially allowing me more room to deep strike my drop pods. More on the drop pods in a minute here. But yeah, the guy, he's kind of durable. He's only got 4 wounds, but he's got a 5-up, feel no pain. He is stealth, so he's -1 to hit. Got the lone operative, as we say. And like I said, the big reason is he can infiltrate and kind of stake out a little ground for the rest of my deep striking army to get into. I think one of the challenges I have with this army is that I do a ton of deep striking, and I don't have a lot of small units to go out there, do actions, or really just to score, not to score, but to stake out a place where my opponent can't deep strike in, or basically or infiltrate or get close. So with him, the Cowardice Assassin I'm going to take, the ATVs. I'm going to just kind of stake out my little place on the board and give my drop pods more room to actually drop in where I want them to. Also, his special ability, within 9. If someone moves within 9 inches of him, then he can make a normal move in any direction to kind of back up and keep himself safe. He also picks an objective that's in no man's land, and the whole army rerolls wound rolls of 1 for targets that are on that objective as long as he's alive. So we'll see if I remember that. That's one of those rules I may just totally forget about, guys. So we're going to see if I remember that today. Stay with me. Okay. And then the next character is just the Cowardice Assassin. Don't have to talk too much about her. She does infiltrate. She's got lone operative. She uppy downies, and I can make one of my opponent's battle tactic strats more expensive. And she fights first, which is kind of handy. So if my opponent does charge her, at least she gets a couple swings in before she goes down. Next, we have a 5-man squad of infiltrators. The infiltrators, their special rule, which makes them so valuable, is that you cannot deep strike within or come in from reserves within 12 inches of their unit. Just kind of blocks out my deployment zone. Also, the captain probably is going to link onto this squad, and it'll keep him safe as well because people can't deep strike close to them. It helps him block out my deployment zone, helps prevent my opponent from scoring by deep striking into at least that section of the board. Even things with, there's so many things that have a 3-inch deep strike now, it's super useful to have them around. I had assault intercessors before that I was pairing a captain with, but we're just going to try the infiltrators here just to kind of stake out my little section of the board, keep my deployment zone safe. Next, we have we've got the Eradicator squad. This is a 6-man Eradicator squad that's got 2 multi-meltas and 4 melta rifles. You guys know Eradicator's special rules that they reroll hits, wounds, and damage into vehicles or monsters, and they're better able to hunt those types of things because they'll be joined by the Apothecary Biologist. It gives them lethal hits, and as we said, with the enhancement, they'll be able to deep strike. Deep striking Eradicators can be kind of scary. Next, we have 3 of the ATVs. So we're going to start talking about devastating wounds. So the ATVs, they're good little. They're only 70 points. They got a 12-inch move. They can scooch around. They have an onslaught Gatling cannon on, so it's 8 shots that have devastating wounds. And there's special rules they can shoot back if a mounted unit was a target of an attack near them. I've never used this in game. Maybe today's the day, guys. Maybe today's the day I remember that they can shoot back if another ATV near them within 6 inches of them is shot at. Odds are I totally forget about it. But the real reason they're here is to kind of get out there and skirmish and trade and force my opponent to come out. But also when I pop off that Tome of Ectoclades and those Gatling cannons with their 8 shots, reroll hits and wounds. With those devastating wounds, they can pop off quite a few devastating wounds, especially because usually when I pop off the Tome of Ectoclades, I also pop off sustained hits in the same turn. So most units that have, they get as many hits as they have shots, even if not a few more sometimes because of the sustained. So 8 shots with devastating wounds, rerolling hits, wounds, same with sustained and devastating wounds, just means they should get 3 or 4 devastating wounds apiece, which can really add up. They're not the bulk of my devastating wounds, though, but they help contribute to that. Now, let's talk about the bulk of the devastating wounds, where they are coming from. My Sternguard. All right, guys, 30 Sternguard, 3 10-man squads of Sternguard. Now, first of all, their special rule is that they reroll 1s to wound when they target the Oath of Moment target. So it gives them a little more efficiency into mostly into infantry, because they do have devastating wounds in their guns, but they only pop off on 6s. So it will give them a little bit of efficiency. And this is another one of those rules I just got to make sure I'm remembering when I play it. But yeah, so what are Sternguard? They're just basic Space Marines. You know, they're T4, 2 wounds, 3 up armor. Nothing fancy there. Their gun options are pretty good, though. Now, there's one, a combi weapon that I'm not taking. I'm not going to get into the stats for it. It does have devastating wounds as anti-infantry, but it only gets 1 shot, 2 if you're within 12 inches for rapid fire. And doesn't have any other special rules in addition to that. What I gave all of these Sternguard is the Sternguard Bolter. So the Sternguard Bolter is heavy, and it's ballistic skills 3, so if they don't move, they hit on 2s. It is assault as well. That's something the other combi bolter does not have. It is assault, so they can advance and shoot if they need to, advance and do actions if I need them to. It gives them a little bit of extra mobility. And then it's 2 shots, strength 4, AP 1, 1 damage, and devastating wounds. And it's rapid fire 1. So if I get within 12 inches with these guys, then each one of them gets 3 shots. That's 3 bolter shots, strength 4, AP 1, 1 damage, but they do have devastating wounds. Now, when we add that into the fact that for every 5 men you take in a squad, you can have 1 heavy bolter. So that means a 10-man squad has got 2 heavy bolters. The heavy bolters are just like normal heavy bolters, except they are Sternguard heavy bolters, which means they also have devastating wounds. Devastating wounds on 2 damage heavy bolters. So an entire 10-man squad of these guys is going to get 24. If I'm within 12 inches for rapid fire, I'm going to get 24 shots that have devastating wounds that are 1 damage, plus 6 more shots that have devastating wounds that are 2 damage. That's 30 shots with devastating wounds. You can imagine when I pop off that tome turn and pop off sustained, and I'm re-rolling all my hits and all my wounds, fishing for those devs, I can crank out a lot of devastating wounds. It can be kind of swingy because we're relying on 6s, but there have been times when I've done 12 or 13 devastating wounds with a single 30-man or single 10-man squad. So they shoot well. They have tactical flexibility because those, the bolters do let them they'll assault and they're heavy. So if they stand still, once they come in, they do get to hit on 2s. And they're Sternguard, so each guy, they don't have, they have a close combat attack. It's just strength 4, AP nothing, 1 damage. But they get 4 attacks apiece because they're veterans. So they can punch kind of hard. You imagine a 10-man squad of these getting 40 hits. They do punch kind of hard. The sergeant can take a power fist. So the sergeant in each of these squads is a power fist. And again, it's 4 attacks. So he gets 4 attacks with the strength 8, AP 2, 2 damage power fist, which can come in clutch sometimes. And then finally, my favorite little rule is that all the ranged weapons on these guys have devastating wounds. Even their pistols, even their Sternguard pistols. So even if they're stuck in close combat with something and they shoot at it, they can still pop off a couple dev wounds with their dinky little pistols. So that is the Sternguard. Now, one of the key things to understand with the DeathWatch is I do have a strat where I can extend the range of their bolt weapons by 6 inches. So if I do get them a little bit out of the rapid fire range, I can extend my rapid fire range. The range of the gun goes from 24 to 30. That means the rapid fire range goes from 12 to 15 inches. So I can bump up the rapid fire range a little bit. That strat also increases their AP by 1, too, which can be relevant if I'm, wounding things in something other than 6 when it's not just a dev wound. I do have another strat that allows them to ignore cover and advance. Now, they already have assault, except for the heavy bolters don't have assault, so I can let them use that strat as well. The third strat gives them anti-infantry 2-up, but you're not allowed to use it on weapons that have dev wounds. So I won't be using that strat because they all have dev wounds. So, as I said, 30 shots, but I got to get them within rapid fire range. So the best way to get them within rapid fire range, in my opinion, is to throw them in drop pods. So this list has 3 drop pods. They can throw 3 10-man Sternguard squads in there and drop them in danger close, drop them in rapid fire range. The drop pods do some neat things. You know, they can drop in turn 1, 2, or 3. They start in reserves, drop in 1, 2, or 3. A fun little thing now is they're not dedicated transports, so you can't take 6 of them, but it does mean that you can actually bring them in empty if you wanted to. If for some reason I wanted to, I could use them as empty units. I don't have to start anything in them in game because they're not dedicated transports. And they have the ability to drop in turn 1 too. It's one of their special rules, but they also ignore any limits to things being in deep strike. So I can put a lot of stuff in deep strike. In this list, it's going to be the 750 points for the 3 Sternguard and the 3 drop pods. And then I forget, it's 280 or 290 points for the Eradicators with the Apothecary. So it's a little over the 1,000 points they can go in deep strike. But again, the drop pods ignore that. I've also run this list with some Inceptors and that sort of thing. They go in deep strike as well. So being able to ignore the 1,000-point limit with the drop pods is kind of handy. Not quite done with the paint on these guys. I got 2 of them I still got to finish painting. One of them, as you'll notice, has non-DeathWatch colors on it. This is from a Space Marine army I built like 12 or 15 years ago. It's been a long time ago where I had some green and white highlights, and I highlighted the black with purple. So that's why we got this oddball drop pod that's not quite DeathWatch. I got to get some more paint on the other ones and maybe switch the green stuff over to red if I get a chance to. Got a GT coming up this weekend. Got to get that paint done. That's it, guys. That's everything. That's everything in the list, except no, it's not. I am bringing a 6-man squad of Devastator Centurions. Devastator Centurions are strong. They hit really hard, but their big drawback is that they're infantry and they have a 4-inch move. So they're really best if they can take advantage of a transport. They're hard to transport because they take up 3 spots in transport, so they can only go in Land Raiders or something with similar high capacity, even just for a 3-man. But they only have a 4-inch move, but they shoot so hard. So each one of these guys, the way I have them equipped is they have 2 lascan, or I have a twin-linked lascan, not 2 lascans. They have a twin-linked lascan. So each one's got a lascan shot. So strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 1 damage, but they're twin links, so they do reroll their wounds. And then each one has a Centurion missile launcher on it. Each one of these is D3 shots plus blast, and they're strength 9, AP 2, D3 damage. Now, there's 6 of them in this squad. So when I go into a group of a squad of like 10, if I shoot at a squad of 10, that blast gives me 2 extra of those missile shots per guy, per Centurion. So the full 6-man gets 12 extra shots plus 6 D3, averaging around 24 shots with strength 9, AP 2, D3 damage. They can do some work into both vehicles and infantry just because they have so many shots that can pop off. You can imagine shooting like a 20-man brick or something with these guys. They get so many shots. Now, because DeathWatch have a strat, the Teleportarium, that lets me pick up and put down 1 infantry unit. The Devastator Centurions are infantry, so I can scoop them up, I can drop them down. Specifically, the DeathWatch Teleportarium strat is at the end of my opponent's turn, I spend 1 CP, I can pick up 1 infantry squad, or 2 if they're kill teams. I don't have any kill teams. So in this list. So I can pick up the DeathWatch, I can pick up the Devastator Centurions, or the Eradicators, or one of those Sternguard squads. A lot of times it's going to be the Devastator Centurions. I can pick them up, and then per the strat, I just bring them down in my next, at the end of my next movement phase, anywhere on the table 9 inches away. So I can even do that turn 1 if my opponent goes first, because it doesn't say they go into reserves. They just come down the next, at the end of my next movement phase. Now, the special rule for Devastator Centurions is they reroll 1s to hit all the time. And if the target is on an objective, they re-roll all their hits. So it's nice that I have another unit that doesn't rely on Oath of Moment if I'm shooting something on an objective. Even if the target's not an objective, re-rolling ones to hit is pretty strong. And Overwatch, of course, is very strong with them if I'm shooting Overwatch at something that is on an objective as well, because I'm re-rolling all my Overwatch hits too. So, all right, that is it, guys. That is the list. All right, that is this week's DevWatch, the new variation of DevWatch. I am going to a GT in Pittsburgh this coming weekend, so this is the list I'm taking to that. DJ is giving me some GT practice for that. Really excited. It hits really hard, but obviously it's a weird looking list. When you see it all put out there, it's, what is this thing? It's a bunch of infantry, 30 Sternguard. It's madness. But what I'm hoping to see, or hoping for you to see today, is obviously we want to pop off that term where I choose to both go sustain on everything with my mission tactics and use the enhancement Tome of Ectoclades, where I reroll all hits, reroll all wounds, get sustained, and just see if we can make all those devastating wound shots really cook. If all of the Sternguard are within their rapid fire range, that's 90 shots, 18 of which are 2 damage with the heavy bolters. Plus we have the 3 ATVs. And they're 8 shots apiece. So 3 of them are 24 shots. So overall in all, we got 114 devastating wound shots. We've got a 6-man brick of Eradicators that deep strikes. And then we've got the Devastator Centurions that bop around the table. It definitely has the potential to hit very hard. But sometimes the targets aren't always optimal. But I'm hoping that I can make it work here. Now, what I hope to see today, I want to see a good Overwatch, because both the Eradicators and the Devastator Centurions have the ability to overwatch pretty well when their target is either a vehicle or monster for the Eradicators, or if it's on an objective for the Devastator Centurions. And if that sustained is still active, means every 6 is going to count as 2 hits. So it can definitely pop off on Overwatch. Then I just want to be able to control the board. What I struggled with my last Devastating Wounds DeathWatch list was getting on objectives when I needed to. I hope the drop pods let me do that. Drop on there. They can also, their drop pods have guns, so they can still do stuff. They can drop onto objective, let out the Sternguard, and then the drop pod can like cleanse or deploy teleport homers, that sort of thing. They have the ability to do an action or investigate signals. So I want to see if I can use them that way today. They also are OC2, so they can control an objective if I need them to, and let the Sternguard kind of go out and mess with the opponent's army. So other than that, that's what I'm hoping to see happen. I'm hoping to see a lot of destruction in the DJ's Necrons, but follow me over to Battle Report to see if that holds true. All right, guys, catch you there.